Hey everybody, I'm John.
And I'm Natalie, and we are American Tifosi. On this podcast, we talk about everything Formula One, drama on the track, drama off the track. We're talking about it here today. And today, we are talking about the Austrian Grand Prix review.
That's right. It was a great race. Natalie, what was your lasting memory from the Austria GP?
My lasting memory, I texted John about this while it was happening, was about it was the McLaren fight towards the end. That was wild. I said, this is going to be in so many edits all over Instagram. It was very dangerous, but I really, really enjoyed that racing. It was incredible to watch that. What about you?
Yeah, I think that is really pertinent, and also my lasting memory is that hopefully I'm wrong, but the beginning of the end for Williams.
Whoa.
Um, Carlos Sainz failed to start, and to me, this kind of interestingly maybe plays into your lasting memory and the great racing that we saw pretty much the whole race between Oscar and Lando was that.
Hmm.
So they did an aborted formation lap for Carlos Sainz,
Hmm.
and so that took one lap off the length of the race. So it knocked it from
Yeah.
71 down to 70. At the end, at what was everyone saying at the end of the race? Man, if Oscar Piastri only had one or two more laps,
Yeah.
he might have caught Lando Norris.
Oh, interesting.
So Carlos, I mean, I don't know what's going on with him. I had texted you and showed you in the notes that I'm not sure what's going on with Williams. Alex has been doing well. He's been qualifying
Hmm.
well. He's got three DNFs in a row that aren't his fault. His car just kind of
Right.
implodes on him. But Carlos qualified 19th. I mean, he's
Hmm.
still qualified like crap. And then
Yeah.
through no fault of his own, his car wouldn't start. And then when it finally did start, it just inexplicably caught on fire.
Right.
So he was out before it even began. But I mean, he was still having to come from 19th. So I don't know. I'm looking at the constructors' points now. Williams is still
Hmm.
in fifth, but Racing Bulls are catching him,
Yeah.
and Racing Bulls had a decent weekend, or Liam Lawson had a
Hmm.
decent weekend. Um, they're all starting to catch up except for LP.
Right.
So my lasting memory would just be that we had what's going on with the Williams. They were so comfortably
Hmm.
fifth place and
Right.
best of the rest, and now I don't think anybody thinks they're best of the rest anymore. They are by
No.
the scoreboard because they built such a good lead. But don't look now. Aston Sauber, really? Aston Martin is catching them. Well, one driver from Aston Martin is catching them, and both drivers from Sauber are catching them. So
Right.
yeah, but yeah, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the
Let's do
race.
it.
Um, I'm kind of surprised your lasting memory was not Kimmy and Max, but
Oh, please. I mean, let's talk about it. But
yeah,
no, I mean, I when that happened, I was shocked and I was scared for Kimmy. There were some jokes going around. He was sitting in the car waiting until Max figured out if it was George Russell or if it was Kimmy, because if it was George Russell, there we might have seen some excitement on the track
yeah.
between those two. But no, I mean, I felt terrible for Kimmy because he did just great last week, getting a podium after having a few weeks of not very good stints. And now this happens, and he doesn't even get to be in the race. Um, and for Max, any downfall in Max, I'm happy to see. I will say, we were talking about this about he didn't get a race ban because he didn't race. He didn't have any time to get any points docked from his super license. But I mean, this is pretty much a race ban in itself. He didn't get to race. He didn't get to shoot for any points. So I don't know. I think this is a win-lose for me, a win for Max not being able to race, and a lose for poor Kimmy.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. Other than, I mean, it can only be said that it was Kimmy's fault. I mean, it wasn't
Right.
anybody else's fault. Like he
Yeah.
wasn't diving out of the way to avoid. Like he made a mistake. You can call it a rookie mistake, and it's just a bad, poor coincidence that it happened to take out Max Verstappen, who's
Hmm.
the only thing that I would add to this is that as a fan of racing, we got a good race because we got a great race for first and second. The
Hmm.
midfield, there was awesome. I loved seeing the different strategies all along. And if you were to ask anybody that knew anything about Formula One, hey, who has the best shot of coming from seventh or eighth or wherever it is Max started to win the race, everyone would have
Right.
said Max Verstappen. So
Right.
when you knock him out of the race, it just sucks because it might have made for even more interesting
Mhm.
racing.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
George Russell finishes fifth, 30 seconds behind the McLarens.
Mhm.
That to me speaks to where maybe Max might have been. And so maybe we
Yeah.
would have gotten some spice between Max and George.
Right.
And you're
And
right,
could
he
have
didn't
got
get
that
a
race ban.
yeah. Well, so he didn't get a race ban. You're right. He still has to kind of minorly watch his P's and Q's because only two. It's a rolling runoff, so 2 points have fallen off effective.
Mhm.
So he's still at 10 out of 12, I believe. Maybe
Right.
it's 9 out of 12
Mhm.
up till like October.
Yeah.
And then interestingly, we didn't hear anything about Kimmy for a little while. Obviously, they couldn't give him a penalty because he wrecked his car, and so they can't give him a penalty. So he got a
Right.
three place grid penalty, which is to me that's a little bit. Usually, you see five or even more when you
Mhm.
destroy two. I mean, if he destroyed just himself, then maybe I can see
Yeah.
three. But he
Right.
takes out Max Verstappen. That's it. Doesn't matter that it's Max Verstappen, but when you take out another driver who doesn't even have a
Mhm.
chance to score points, then
Right.
I was kind of surprised that it was only three,
Yeah.
three place stop, and that's going to hurt come Silverstone because Mercedes likes to do well at Silverstone, and they
Mhm.
generally do well. I mean, do. George Russell won last year, so or no, sorry, Lewis Hamilton won in
Yeah.
Mercedes, and George got second. Um, so you're hurting your whole team by this too. So yeah, just bad news. And as a Max hater, I was sad to see it. As a Formula One lover, I'm sorry. As a Max hater, I was happy to see it. As a Formula One
Right.
appreciator, I was sad to see it because we lost out on some good racing.
Mhm. Absolutely.
Then as we move on through the race, Ferrari, I know that you and I both kind of made note of some of the more radio commentary, but
Mhm.
Lewis, what are your thoughts
Yes.
on that?
My thoughts are, I'm starting to feel pretty bad for the guy. I know you have your opinions on the strategy, and Ferrari did well this race. They got a 3-4, which is great for them so far in this season, but they are still kind of doing Lewis a little dirty, and I can see that he's like, like as we get more into the season, he's just becoming like less and less hopeful, it seems. Um, which is sad because he was really excited to join Ferrari. He left the team that he won all of his championships with for them, and they're just uh, partially they're not treating him right, and partially he's just not performing well, which is I'm sure it's just a hard reality for him to take on after doing so great all of these years. Um, I almost said my lasting memory was at the end of the race when he looked at the pace board and just was looking at, saw that he was, I think it was maybe a minute behind on pace for the top three. And he just like shook his head in disappointment, walked away. And I don't know, I'm starting to feel bad for him. But Ferrari did good this race, so you can't discount that.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree with anything you're saying. The strategy Lewis came on the radio, and we don't exactly know because I'm I'm not a fan of when you watch the Sky Sports because you don't necessarily know when you're getting those audio
Hmm.
cut-ins and what they relate to. But he was unhappy with the pit strategy because he thought it would give him a shot to pass Charles.
Hmm.
The only thing that I would say about that, they pointed this out several times this race in particular because the McLarens, Oscar, I'm sorry, Lando being in front of Oscar, they're not gonna. I'm not upset of them for not trying to cultivate some sort of pit strategy to pass Charles Leclerc. I mean,
Hmm.
what that doesn't do anything other than set up a potential for an accident or a crash between the two of them. They're
Right.
both out of the championship race. I mean,
Hmm.
and let's be honest, Ferrari is probably out of the constructors race. So finishing second or third and fourth is the very best you could have hoped for when the McLarens were 30 seconds at the least away from everybody else.
Right.
That's something else. Don't forget, Charles Leclerc qualified second,
Hmm.
and it sucks that he as a guy that's known as a good starter and good wheel to wheel racer, it would have been nice to see him hold off Oscar Piastri beyond what turn four and on
Right.
lap one.
Right.
But let's be honest, the McLarens were going to pass him. I mean,
Right.
they were so dominant. If you go back to
Mhm.
qualifying, Lando was a half a second faster than everybody else.
Right.
That's more than the gap of the entire season so far.
Mhm.
So far it's
Yeah.
just um, I'm I'm happy for Ferrari. It's discouraging because you look and you're like, man, how far off are they from McLaren? But the good news is they're the best of the rest, and
Right.
you know hopefully there's definitely some growth.
Yeah. And
Um,
to your point, I think they're out of the constructors too, but so is everyone else because at least
oh
Ferrari's
yeah, for
in
sure.
is in second,
Yeah,
but by like 100, 200 points. I haven't checked the points recently, but I don't no
they're
one's catching
behind
up to
they're behind
McLaren.
McLaren by 207 points,
Yeah. And that's
and they're
second
ahead.
place. So,
Yeah, yeah, and they're ahead of Mercedes only by one.
yeah,
They just
absolutely.
Mercedes had that banger weekend in
Mhm.
was it Montreal? Was it last? Yeah,
Yep.
Montreal where they got 1 and 3.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm not unhappy about Ferrari. It's just as a rabid Ferrari Tifosi fan, like I want them to do better. But
Mhm.
if I look at it through the lens of realism, I'm like,
Mhm.
this is the very best we can expect from
Yeah,
Ferrari.
absolutely. I agree.
Now let's talk about your second favorite, weirdly pronounced name, Franco Colapinto.
Okay, let's talk about Franco Colapinto. I'm upset with that man this week.
Yeah,
He did some dirty, naughty things. Dare I say, some rookie things. Get out of the way for the race leaders. What are you doing? Lap
yeah,
54, they're coming through. Oscar is trailing right behind Lando, and then Franco is just in the way. You can't be in the way. You are in the back of the grid. You're what we see was either 19 or 20 because Yuki was the other 19 or 20. What are you doing? Yuki tried to get out of the way. He was sort of also in the way, but he maybe has a little more experience getting out of the way. Franco, that was awful to watch. I was so angry. I yelled at my phone, and I don't like being angry at Franco, so it pains me.
yeah. I thought that. I mean, I listened to some other podcasters that know way more than I do. Um, and they were trying to like be defensive for Franco, like, oh, he was racing Yuki still. My thought is, in front of you, you just said this, in front of you, you see Lando Norris. That
You're
means
right.
Oscar Piastri is behind you,
Right.
you know, and uh, yeah, and also maybe shame on his team. We don't know, we don't because we didn't
Right.
get the audio,
Mhm.
but maybe his team was saying, hey, there's somebody behind you, and if they didn't, shame on you. You
Right.
have to notify them of
Right.
what's going on. But also somewhere on like lap 17 or 18, he was under investigation for um, causing a collision with Ollie Bierman,
Mhm.
and he didn't get a penalty. And
Right.
then later on, Yuki and Yuki was wrong, and we'll get to Yuki in a minute. But Yuki crashed Colapinto.
Mhm.
Uh, if you are involved in three racing incidents that cause collisions in one track,
Yeah.
that I don't care that they're not all your fault. That's a problem. Like
Yeah.
you have to be better.
Absolutely.
You know,
That's terrible. And um also let's like you guys are fighting for P19. You're
right?
not fighting for points. Like you said, Lando was right there. Even if Oscar wasn't right behind him, which of course he is, Lando just passed. Like you should not be fighting right after that. You need to take a
Right.
pause.
Yeah. Um, and then just to touch on Yuki, like um, I know we didn't put this in our notes, but it's so funny to me that we're not hearing about replacement at Red Bull
Yeah.
when
Hmm.
Yuki probably, I don't think probably, I think this is definitely his worst race with Red Bull. And
Yes.
simultaneously, VCARB, Liam Lawson scored high in the points.
Hmm.
Hajar was just outside the points.
Hmm.
And here's Yuki getting a 10-second penalty for crashing Colapinto. And it
Yeah.
was a completely deserved penalty. I'm not Yeah, as I've always said, I like to assign blame. This was easy. You don't need to watch a
Right.
million replays. Yuki crashed into Colapinto.
Yeah.
Um, he had pretty crappy qualifying, although Max, to be fair, didn't have a great qualifying effort either. So,
Right.
um, and I just don't understand what's going on with him, and I'm sad because I genuinely like Yuki Tsunoda, and I think
Hmm.
that he's not going to get a shot beyond next season. His contract was up,
Right.
and so everybody kind of thought he was done with Red Bull and or VCarb. Um, but if he just stayed with VCarb, he might be doing. If let's just say he's was in VCarb, and he's probably then it's safe to assume he's doing what Liam Lawson is doing or Isaac
Right.
Hadjar is doing, but maybe better
Right.
because he's a better driver than them.
Right.
Now he's getting a job somewhere else.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
I
It's
don't know.
just, it's that second Red Bull seat. I don't I don't blame the drivers in that seat because they've all performed poorly. It's not them, it's the car, it's the team. I don't know what it is. It's the fact that they're not Max Verstappen. Um, and that's where you go if you want your career to die. And I feel bad for Yuki because I like Yuki. And God, I really hope that Isaac Hadjar does not fall prey to that second Red Bull seat.
I
Because
totally
I
agree.
think he's capable of greatness. We've debated whether him or Kimi is the better driver, which one is the better rookie currently. He and Kimi are destined for greatness unless he goes to that Red Bull seat. And
Yeah,
I just really hope that doesn't happen.
I don't disagree with you, and that's I mean this is we can maybe a different time for a different podcast, but you know the only silver lining for Red Bull is what if Max does leave? Now they're going
Right.
to have to. I mean, you could argue that two ways. Their car is terrible and it's built only for Max. Well, if Max leaves, now their car is terrible.
Right.
but but maybe they build their car for both their drivers instead of
Hmm.
just one. So who
Right.
knows? But their other Red Bull team is doing really well, so I guess they've got to be
Yes.
happy. So two of the four cars they own,
Right.
don't get me started again. Um, yeah, but then the other team that we have been joking about for as long as we've been doing this is Kick Sauber.
Yep. They must have heard us. They must have heard of us because they
Yeah,
have stepped it up.
I made the joke more than once, and I've probably stolen it from somebody. But their car was green to match the dumpster they're driving,
Right.
and I don't think we can say that anymore.
No, we
Uh,
cannot.
both kick Saubers, and so of the rest of the field, they're the only team to have both their drivers score.
Hmm.
Um, of the obviously Ferrari, McLaren, but of Aston Martin and all the other teams that they are the only team that have both their drivers score. Nico Hulkenberg has scored 3 races in a row, and
Yes.
Gabriel Bortoleto got his first points ever.
Yes. I was very happy
So
for him.
I was happy for him, and then the fact that at the end he was kind of racing Alonso, who's his
Yes.
manager, and remember,
Right.
I think it Jeddah or Suzuka where he basically,
Crashed into him.
yeah, he forced Alonso off, and that caused Alonso not to get points. So
Hmm.
like we got a little bit of justice prevailing. Alonso
Yes.
scored,
Right.
Bortoleto didn't pass him.
Well, he did
Um,
once, but Fernando
he
took the
did,
position right away back.
yeah, that's
And
true, and that was great racing too.
yeah,
Um,
it was.
So I'm happy for them. They have now jumped Alpine, and
Wow.
so are no longer in the cellar of Formula One
Wow.
constructors. Um, and
Incredible.
and they have both drivers that have scored, and so now
Yeah.
it's just Alpine that have a driver that hasn't scored.
Right. Right. Which is a little concerning. I need Pierre to step it up, but I don't know. I don't know that it's the driver. I mean, this time it was the driver. Franco absolutely was the driver, but they don't really have a great car.
Yeah,
There's
and
nothing
something
you can do
happened.
about that.
Something happened with the car because Pierre qualified sixth. I mean, Pierre qualified. Oh no, yeah, he qualified sixth or seventh, but then he spun
Hmm.
out during qualifying. But
Yeah.
I mean, and then for him to fall all the way out of the points,
Right.
I'd heard floor damage, and um, yeah, that's becoming the new buzz phrase around Formula One is floor damage now. So
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Absolutely.
actually, if I can go back and talk about Ferrari for just a second,
Yeah.
the team order where they told him to Lyco, lift and coast. They told Charles to
Hmm.
lift and coast.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, Fred Vasseur, who wasn't there, who was not at Austria, but he's been on the record since then saying that yeah, they were very concerned about floor damage and then getting
Mm.
penalized and losing the race again, which is why
Mm.
they had to like not race so aggressively over the curb
Yeah.
because if they scrape off too much of that skid plate off their floor, now their ride height is, and then they get
Right.
disqualified again.
Yep.
So that's one of the reasons for the order to Lyco and lift and
Hmm.
coast. But we've vacillated on all these different terms. We've heard Papaya Rules, which evidently
Hmm.
is back and strong right now, and
It is.
dirty air and floor
Yep.
damage, and so now we can just add Lyco to the new hotness term for Formula
Absolutely.
One.
I'd like to circle back to McLaren really quickly
Yeah,
and talk about that fight a little bit. Um, it was beautiful. It was incredible. I will never forget it. It was really great to see them racing side by side like that. Um, I didn't appreciate the team telling Oscar, it was after his pit stop. They told Oscar maybe 15 laps after that almost collision they had. He had a little tire lockup. They told him 15 laps after, hey, you can't push like this. You need to be more careful. And they said this to him when he's maybe 4 or 5 seconds behind Lando. So I think that was unnecessary. It kind of probably could have gotten into his head. It worked out for the team. They got their 1-2, but I don't know. I thought that was unnecessary. They waited too long to say something, and he wasn't even near Lando for that to be a problem. So I think that I didn't appreciate that from the McLaren team. But obviously, it didn't end up being a problem.
yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up, and I am gonna disagree
Okay.
for two reasons. I'm not arguing any of the things that you said. That all those things were said. We don't know exactly when that radio message came. We know when it was aired, and it was,
Mhm.
you're right, to your point, 15 or something laps later. Um, I took the message, and then they even kind of discussed it on the during the broadcast, and I could see how you take the message either way. The way I took the message is you can't attempt to make a pass like that on turn six like you did. Turn six is not
Mhm.
a passing zone. You
Mhm.
you put flat stop spots on your tires that he made a comment of, that
Yeah,
Oscar
he
himself made a
did.
comment about. Like for a, he made it a, I don't want to say dangerous because of all the drivers, Oscar is like, he knows the limits of his car.
Yeah.
He made a questionable pass or
Mhm.
a questionable attempt at a pass.
Right.
Um, he didn't necessarily cause damage to his car, but he impacted his own performance by doing
Mhm.
it. Um, and in an area that if he would have made the pass stick, they probably would have collided. So
Mhm.
I took the radio message. They said something like, "Hey, um, the consensus from the pit wall is we don't want you racing marginally like that again."
Right.
I took that as, I don't want you to try and pass in an area that you shouldn't be passing on.
Yeah. Right.
What's
I
interesting is
agree.
we never heard a reply from Oscar, so we don't know
Mhm.
if it got into his head, or we don't know. Oscar might have even said something like, "Yeah, that was stupid."
Yeah,
Who
right.
knows?
I
Who knows?
think that's
So,
reasonable. Um, but I also think that after Oscar makes that mistake, I just don't think it needed to be said. I think after he messed up his own performance and not Lando's, so I'm sure that he took that and knew I'm not going to do this again. So I think it was just unnecessary. But you're right. I think maybe it was just specifically
well,
about making those dirty passes.
and then I would just say that as the race went on, because that was at like lap 45 or 50, right? And
Hmm.
then they had one
Yeah.
more pit to do,
Right.
and then you never heard a peep from Oscar's team on the radio, or at least they
Hmm.
didn't show us anything on the radio when Oscar was getting really close to Lando. He was trying to
Yeah.
pass him, so we never heard, "Hey, what are you doing?"
Right.
We still we Everything showed that they were still allowed to race.
Right.
So to me,
Yeah.
that just kind of strengthens my belief that they said, oh, just don't try and pass in areas that aren't known for passing.
Yeah.
Still race on those first three straights. Those were all great racing, and
They were incredible.
I talked about this at the very beginning. If there was one or two more laps, man, I think Austria might have had Lando.
If only. If
If only,
only.
yeah. Want to go over some predictions?
Let's do it.
All right.
Not looking
Well,
too good for us.
no, no, for sure. You and I both had Max on the pole. That didn't happen. He qualified, what was it,
No.
seventh?
Yep.
Not much to say about that. I was actually happy to be wrong
Me
at the
too.
time when during qualifying, just because I was like, all right, well, this is going to make for a good race, and I was more happy for Charles in second.
hmm
Um, we didn't have any earthly idea how strong the McLarens were going to be, though.
Right.
Podium, we both had Oscar, we both had Max, and then we alternated Lando and George.
Yes. Did
Um,
not happen.
none of that happened. And bold prediction, I had Lewis better than Charles. You mentioned why already that didn't happen either. I don't know why. I mean, we can wax about that all. You kind of hit all the good talking points already, but I'm not sure why Lewis is so much slower than Charles.
Right.
In theory, they're in the same car. So,
Yeah. I don't know. It's disappointing.
yeah. And you had Max getting a ban. That didn't happen either.
That didn't happen, but he didn't get any points or a race.
Yeah,
I'm happy
essentially
with
those
that.
are right. Um, and that's something that I don't know that I think I had texted you that I'm kind of glad that he didn't get the ban because I'm
hmm
under the assumption if he'd have got a penalty and then got a race ban, his points reset down to zero. I don't
Really?
I don't know that, but I
Oh,
can't imagine they just go down to 11.
right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's
So at
fair.
least now he's sitting on 9 or 10 penalty
Right.
points. Basically, to your point, having served a ban, but he's still
Yeah.
kind of got to be a nice boy.
hmm
So I don't know how many, if you get a race ban, how many points that resets you down to, but it would
Yeah.
have given him probably some sort of more wiggle room than he has now.
Right.
So I'm kind
Yeah.
of glad that it happened this way.
Yeah.
All right, goat and donkey.
Let's do it.
Who is your goat of the day?
My goat of the day is one, Charles Leclerc. Um, I'm very happy, of course. Ferrari boy up on the podium where he should be. Maybe a few steps down than from where he should be, but he made it. I'm very happy for him. And I'm happy that Lewis was right behind him. Should have been a 1-2. It was a 3-4. That's okay. And I also said Bortoleto. There can be two goats if I want there to be, and there are.
There.
Bortoleto, I'm so happy for him. He got
Yeah.
his first points, and it was really beautiful to see Fernando come up to him and give him a hug, and I thought that was really sweet.
Yeah, I have Sauber, just Team Sauber as a
hmm
as for as hard as I've been on Sauber and Stroll, I'm also want to be rewarding when they do really well. So thankfully, I
Right.
don't have to reward Stroll yet. But Sauber has been, I mean, they've been awesome, and
hmm
I'm cautiously, I'll just say, um, I'm trying to figure out a way to incorporate Sauber positively into my bold prediction for Silverstone. So
Okay. That sounds nice.
donkey of the day, who you got?
Franco. Unfortunately, it's got to be Franco. What are you doing? This is a racetrack. You need to move out of the way if you're being lapped. You're being lapped and you're fighting for 19th place. That is ridiculous. It was terrible. Never do that again. It's Franco Colapinto for me.
Yeah, I kind of want to say Kimmy. I think if I were being objective, and we said that on the very very first podcast we ever did that
hmm
we're fans first and objective second. So if I
Right.
were being objective, I should say Kimmy just because he knocked out Max, who had a chance to do something great in the race.
hmm
Um, but I'm not being objective, so I'm saying Yuki Tsunoda.
All right.
Yuki for the exact reasons you said with Franco, you can't cause two or three accidents, be in a Red Bull car qualifying, what is
Right.
it, dead last or 19th,
Right.
um, and the 10-second penalty, all similar to Franco's. Doesn't matter. He was in 19th place, and what are you going to
Right.
do 10 seconds? You're going to just be farther in
Right.
19th place. But by the way, it's
Yeah.
16th place because four cars didn't finish.
Right.
Um, and then maybe an honorable mention just to Williams. Get your stuff together,
Oh,
Williams. That's
I
all. I mean,
know.
and we got Silverstone coming up. This is their home track, so
hmm
I hope they are able to get whatever. ails their car is turned around.
Hmm. And on the point of Yuki, his other driver is out of the race. So really, everybody's relying on you here. You can't be messing up like this. You're
Yeah,
the only Red Bull out there.
I was talking with a friend of mine at work, and this was such an easy opportunity. If you look at the four DNFs, so I'm gonna go on a small rant here.
Okay.
Or four DNFs. You had the two Williams, Alex Albon and Carlos Sainz, and you had
Hmm.
Max and Kimi. All
Hmm.
four of those, if everything was normal, you would have expected those four to be in the top 10.
Yeah.
It was reasonable to make an assumption that those four would finish in the top 10. So that is
Right.
4 point scorers that did
Yeah.
not finish. So now
Right.
you have the Strolls and the Yukis
Yeah.
and the sadly Isaac Hadjars and let's see, Ollie Behrman and Pierre Gasly and Colapinto. Those are the guys that did not. Those are the six that did not score points.
Right.
And so someone was saying, well, man, Ollie Behrman finished 12th. Well, that essentially is 16th when you consider that it's safe to assume those four were going to finish ahead of you.
Right.
You had all those six drivers all had really good opportunity to score points.
Hmm.
And then you look, we've been very nice to Sauber, but we can also be honest. Sauber, uh, you know, everyone on the grid was expecting to do better than them. And then you had
Right.
Ocon finishing the points that, Haas hasn't been doing. Like,
Right.
there's so many missed opportunities and then Liam Lawson, this is the first time he scored points this year. So, or
Hmm.
the second time he's scored points this year. Um, you know, the people that didn't finish points had every reason to be kicking themselves.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
especially Pierre Gasly and well, maybe not
Hmm.
Franco because he got scored points, but
Right.
Pierre Gasly. Oh, but I finished 11th. No, you didn't. You finished 15th
Right.
or 16th, 17th, really, when you consider it. So I don't know.
Right.
Rant complete.
I agree with everything you said in your rant. I don't, it's ridiculous that two kick Saubers beat a Red Bull car. What are you doing? And Pierre
Right.
Gasly with incredible experience under his belt, he should have gotten in those points.
And then there's Lance Stroll.
Well,
We-
that we can just leave.
right. All right. Well, any final thoughts?
Final thoughts. We'll get to you guys with the preview for Silverstone. Very excited. It's a very exciting race. I did just happen to go see the Formula One movie, so we will be giving you guys a review of that soon, in the next couple of weeks. Very excited to go over that. And yeah, that's it from me.
And I think I'm super. You guys know that Silverstone's my favorite track, so I'm super excited for that. And we'll be with you with a spicy preview for Silverstone.
Yes, very spicy. All right, we'll see you guys shortly.
Take care.